everyone, I'm Ian and I'm a proud member of the Canadian Kennel Club. When I think about the toughest dog breeds out there, it's hard for me not to think about the Australian cattle dog. The Australian cattle dog is wildly intelligent, incredibly beautiful, and they have a history unlike any other dog. Here's how it all went down. Years and years and years ago, when Australia was just being settled by English people, they brought their collies with them, all sorts of collies, and in particular they were using the smooth Merle collie. These dogs were good on the mainland, but when they went out to the outback, the wild cattle mixed with the terrain, the snakes, the wildlife, and the incredible temperatures, these dogs weren't working out so well. They were barking too much, which was scaring the cattle or making the cattle charge towards the horsemen, and the rugged and wild terrain was just too much for them. Their collies were unfortunately perishing. So what they decided to do was they took those collies and bred them with Australia's wild dog. That's right, the dingo, the silent killer. And these dogs were fantastic, but there was a problem that arose with that breeding. What was happening was, keep in mind, people were riding horses at that time. There weren't motorized vehicles. So the cross between the collie and the dingo led to a lot of biting of the horses all the time. This was creating spooked horses. And then they brought another Australian breed, the Australian Kelpie, a wildly intelligent, hardworking dog, and a few other splashes of this and that. But what they got was an incredibly hardworking, wildly intelligent dog, the Australian cattle dog. Australian cattle dogs are striking, that is for sure, but they do require an owner who's just as determined. To learn more about the Australian cattle dog, I've invited my friend Jeremy Browne. He, along with his wife Vicky, run Byeyo permanently registered Australian cattle dogs here in Ontario. Welcome, Jeremy. Tell us all how you got involved in dogs, and especially the Australian cattle dog.
We started 48 years ago with Malamutes, and we were very successful with the Malamutes. I showed horses back then. I had quarter horses, and Malamutes and horses and livestock don't really work real well together. And I had somebody give me a cattle dog, and I always thought the cattle dogs were fairly homely. For showing, I just thought, wow, there's so many more grandeur breeds that you could show versus a cattle dog. But what happened with this cattle dog, it wasn't show quality, but it had all the cattle dog traits and the loyalty and the intelligence. I loved the dogs, and I grew to really, really love the dogs and was passionate about them. And I wanted to start to breed them, and that's what we did.
And it served you very well. You've had a lot of success with these dogs.
Done pretty good. We've done pretty good with the cattle dogs.
Absolutely. They are a very intelligent dog, very capable of a lot of different jobs. And you're a cattle dog breeder extraordinaire, but you're also an all-breed dog judge. Can you tell us a few points? What are we looking for in a good Australian cattle dog?
With cattle dogs and people, cattle dog should be set up like a quarter horse. It should be substantial, should have good bone, should be very square in the rear. These dogs have got to turn and nip and get up underneath, and to do that, say if you had an angulation like a German Shepherd, they did that quick turn, they might fall over. These dogs have got to get up underneath themselves, so shorter hock, low slung, have heads that are conducive to getting kicked, because they're going to get kicked. So you want to have an almond eye, you want a good bite, of course, a muzzle and a head. You don't want a tiny little head on the dog, because of course he's going to get kicked. You're going to kick that right off. You got to be formidable with your skull. Don't want to have a big stop. Hoof stops right here. Take the top of the head. So you want a lot of top skull, but blending into the nose. Certainly the eyes, you want an almond eye. You've got a round bulgy eye. Can you imagine getting that eye kicked? So you want an almond eye because it takes that blow also. You want a lengthened neck. Lengthened neck because the dog's got to reach up underneath. Understand also, when you have a cattle dog and he's nipping at the heels, there's an art to that. The dog is to bite on the weight-bearing foot. If he bites the one that's up in the air already, he's definitely going to get kicked. It's hard to kick something when this leg's up, it's going to nip on this one. One of the misconceptions with cattle dogs is they're all heelers. Babies, when you're watching babies, some go to the heels, some go to the face. So they're headers, and they'll get up and around. An animal that's been dogged, they'll have a tendency to back up into a corner because they don't want that dog getting in behind them. Mm-hmm. You send the header in there. The header grabs by the face, grabs them by the nose, and they'll be shaking them around and doing all sorts of stuff, but they'll come in off the fence. Then you send in the heeler behind to move that out of the area.
That's fascinating, because a lot of people call the Australian cattle dog either a blue heeler or a red heeler. And
true.
Because that's the method a lot of people know that the breed does.
True. When you're out herding and you're running cattle, most of the time you're driving cattle. You're putting them into a pen. A lot of times you don't want to be circling and bringing in steers that are 1,500 pounds towards you. You kind of want to get them away from you and into a pen. But the slang is heelers.
Absolutely.
That's the slang name for them. So, but there is headers in there, and they're used that way. I had a flock of sheep here, and I was feeding Angus cattle, and I had a yo that I bought that was a Dorset blackface, which are tough on dogs, and I had an old dog named Boomer, and he was a fairly substantial dog, and we were in doing some stuff. The work stocked like crazy, and this yo was 320 pounds. I bought her at the auction. I paid by the pound, so 320 pounds, 4 legs, if you can imagine. T-bones Boomer. He was doing something else, and she just come out of the flock and just T-boned him, rolled him over 3 or 4 times. And then I realized, I goes, holy smokes. And, like a sheep's got a head like a hammer, so you have to have a dog that is sturdy enough and compact enough and muscular enough and large enough he can take that kind of a whacking, because he's gonna. If that was a small, tiny little dog, probably would have caved his ribs in and would have passed away right there. So you need something that's substantial. He's got to have some body. You don't want them too tall, because every time an animal kicks, he's going to get kicked. He's got to get up underneath. So you want that flexy neck. You want to have that real square rear, short hock up underneath.
Absolutely. You're talking about how tough they are. Is living day to day with an Australian cattle dog, is that tough? Do you have to have a plan of what you're going to do with the dog that's that intelligent each and every day? What's it like to live with one every day?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, the cattle dogs are undervalued for their intelligence. Cattle dogs are extremely intelligent. You'd think they have an attention disorder for the first 6 months, because they're kind of nutso. Very, very busy. A cattle dog puppy is kind of like a puppy crossed with a cat. Most puppies are fat, roly-poly, they look cute, and they're kind of rolling around each other. Cattle dog puppies have got shiny little eyes, and they're kind of looking around, and yeah, okay. Well, there's food up on top of over there. If I jump on this and over to there, I can get that food, and they'll get it done. They are incredibly smart. They're brave to a fault. They'll jump off things they should never jump off, way too high, but they're busy. And I always say to people, having a bunch of cattle dog puppies, and if you're watching the puppies, which I have the advantage of doing.
I think that's incredible you say that. And when I think of an intelligent dog, like you were just talking about how intelligent the Australian cattle dog is, when I think of dog events and dog sports, there's very few I don't see Australian cattle dogs competing and excelling in. Can you tell me some of the sports they do apart from herding?
I had a guy call me from the African lion safari. He calls me up, and I go through, and he's in the elephant division. So we'll get talking. I says, you work at the elephant division. Yeah, have you ever been here before? I said, yeah. I says, there with my sister. They have scheduled shows for the elephants in the summer. Long story short, he wanted the cattle dog for the elephants. The only dog that'll go in the water, because in the summertime in the river, the elephants are going, oh yeah, we got to do a scheduled show and one for the humans. They're going to stay in the river.
As long as they can.
Yeah, blowing smoke at each other and having a good time having a mud bath. So the only dog that'll go into the river to get them out for the scheduled shows is a cattle dog. Cattle dogs go in there and say, damn, that's a big cow there. Everybody else is going, that's an elephant. I'm not going in there at all. So that's the kind of bravery they have. They're misused. People are just finding out about them. And certainly if you're doing fly ball, there's faster dogs.
And with the dingo blood too, they're resourceful. I mean, a dingo can hunt almost anything. A dingo, just whatever situation presents itself, the dingo deals with it. And the Australian cattle dog is the same, I see.
Most certainly. I think that the dingo gives them a toughness that a Kelpie wouldn't have. I've been in herding trials, and certainly there's some finesse breeds. Cattle dogs in general are not a finesse breed. But I was at one where they had some rough stock cattle that hadn't been dogged before. And the Aussies were afraid of them. I mean, this was tough stuff. Kelpies, they can't handle the tough stuff. You send a cattle dog in there, he handles the tough stuff okay. He likes that.
Now, a lot of people are drawn to the Australian cattle dog, especially with this age of social media, because the dog is spectacular looking. They look unlike any other dog breed. Can you tell me about the colors that you see in a breed like the Australian cattle dog?
What happens is they're born white. The patches, you have the patches around the puppy. So you have white with a black patch. You can't tell the red patch yet. That takes about 7 or 8 days. Then when you get the red, then you can figure that out. You've got mottling, ticking, the blue from the blue merle back in the day, red, dingo. Mm-hmm. So you have that genetic mixed bag of stuff, and whatever comes out comes out. What you're not to have, and one of the problems that a lot of people are going to have is, what's the comparison between a stumpy and a cattle dog? And of course, the stumpy is a little leggier, be more like a thoroughbred horse. they're allowed to have body patches. Cattle dogs aren't. That's a disqualification. You cannot have body patches on, or undesirable, I'll say. So you don't want to have body patches on them. Other than that, it's we have a modeled male here that they've taken pictures of to show down in the States as to what the proper modeling would be. Or what you don't want to look at, you read the Australian standard, you don't want to look at a dog that's mottled and he basically looks more white than anything else. That's not desirable. So you want to have your basic color, your blue or your red is the basic color that you're looking at.
Now the coat is a double coat. Does it require much grooming at all?
No, actually, you've been in the show game for a long time, and when you go in the herding group and you beat the person that has the Old English, you feel kind of ashamed of yourself.
Because it's so hard to get that.
He's groomed for 3 days, and you just kind of kick the mud off him. Okay, you look pretty good, and away you go.
Yes.
So we had Bellamy's before, of course, and then the preparatory time and the grooming and the stuff is far greater. And they're probably like a pair of blue jeans. You wash and wear them, and away you go, and they're pretty good.
That's perfect for a lot of people. They'll like to hear that about them. Now, when it comes to being a family pet, how are they with children? How are they with other dogs, family pets?
It's what you introduce them to. They're territorial. They're there to look after the drover back in the day. Drover's, of course, Australian cowboy. People have this misconception. They think this cattle dog is, circling the herd while the drover's in his bedroll underneath the tree. No, that's not true. The dog's in with the bed and with the drover.
Yeah.
That's his guy. He's going to look after him. Like most other dogs, kids, for most dogs, are strange. So you have to introduce them. And once you have a cattle dog that's used to kids, they'll look after those kids, I'll tell you. And other animals, you got dingo in them. So if they have something strange come in, like a feral cat, they're probably not keen on that. If you have the cats in your house and you're introduced them, they're buddies with them. So it's all part of their pack. And that's how they work.
You have such good dogs, and a lot of people contacting you all the time to ask about your dogs and try and, buy a puppy off you. What are you looking for when it comes to an ideal owner for an Australian cattle dog?
Well, what happens in this day and age with a computer, because I've always wondered, like I put my name in and you say, okay, what's your ideal dog? And you put it in. I've never come up with a cattle dog yet. I got every kind of breed you can think of. I'm thinking, how the heck do these people get a cattle dog, Well, now what you do is if you scan or put in hiker, camper, canoer, or mountain biker, cattle dog comes up. So that's why they're calling me. The other thing with the cattle dogs is I had a detective sergeant in the police force in Toronto. And he was kind of one of these whitewater rafting, rock climbing guys when he was younger in Australia. And, of course, the guy he was working with had a cattle dog. Imprinted him. So when he got older, and as he said to me, because of course it's a tough job, he says, I want to come home to a friend. He knew what a cattle dog was all about. Cattle dogs seem to be their own good ambassador. I had a young couple from Ottawa who were hiking in Australia, went up the coast. Everybody has a cattle dog. When they got home, they had to have a cattle dog. They thought, yeah, this is a great breed. So when you have somebody that has a neighbor that has a cattle dog, and that neighbor wants to buy one, usually you hate the dog next door because he barks too much or whatever. People love the cattle dogs. Once they get to understand them, they're busy. So you don't want somebody way too old. They have to be able to handle, they have to be fairly intelligent because the dogs are really, really smart. So people that are active and they are camping, they're doing the canoeing, they're walking, they're doing stuff. These dogs need to do something because they're way too hyper at the start. They're busy dogs and you need to appease them mentally. So if somebody says they want something to watch TV with, this isn't your dog. If somebody calls me and they only have an apartment, that's not going to happen. But I've also believed, people can say, I got 1,000 acres. If you've got a 10-foot chain on a tree, that dog doesn't see 1,000 acres. He sees a 10-foot chain. So you have to really talk to your people and see what they're all about. And they have to understand that they're going to have a dog that's super smart, super loyal, and busy. And they need to be able to keep up with that.
Someone's looking to buy an Australian cattle dog. What should they look for in a breeder?
I call it the what if concept, which is a banker's. Well, what if you die? How are you going to pay the loan? And the person says, well, what if I have a problem with this puppy? Do I believe this person has enough smarts, has enough connections? Can he help me? Has he been down the road long enough? Credibility for the breeder. Obviously, you want to look type. Like, you know, I say to people, just because I like the cattle dogs that I have, there's other people have other catalogs. You might like their look. I could be a nut job. You go have a look and see what you like. You want to make sure that they've done all the health things. You know, check the eyes. Mine go to University of Guelph before the people get their puppies. We check for hearing because, of course, deafness comes with the breed. And I have certificates for all of them. I have them health checked. They've had their first set of shots. They're going to be microchipped, of course, registered with the Canadian Kennel Club. That's the other thing. You want to make sure that, you know, you're not going to some backyard guy. He hasn't taken into account temperaments. You have a cattle dog that's busy and he's bad-tempered, you've got a huge problem.
Liability.
Liabilities and a huge problem because this is like a machine.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that the breeders, and this is one of the things that we do, you know, our main thing is conformation. But one of the things that we do is we're broad. Like we've done, we've got dogs in agility, obviously on Whistler Mountain. We've got them all over the place, working on buffalo ranches out west. We breed a smart dog too. It's just not a pretty dog. They do everything. They herd, they work. And that's one of the things that people are going to want. They want to have a dog that is smart, that can train easy. And that part of it, if you've got trainability, really makes it nice. And certainly the people, you know, if they come in and say, we've got some longevity here. Not that that means anything. You can be in something for 50 years and not get it done. But I think that if you go through and you read people that are involved and have got a really good breeding program, you should be okay. And there is some good cattle dog breeders. They do, because cattle dog breeders love their dogs. So there's different types and stuff like that, but certainly there's some good breeders.
If someone wants to get a hold of you and your wife and your kennel here, Byeyo permanently registered Australian cattle dogs, do you have a website?
Yes, we do. It's australiancattledogs.ca. And it gives us our history, what we've done in the business, and I say the business, the dog business, because we're actively involved in all aspects of the dog game. And so certainly, and we can direct people. It's not like I'm the end game. In fact, I tell people, look, there's other players that are in the business, and you go here, go there. I said, certainly, if you have a problem with somebody or there's something questionable, certainly give me a call, and I'll give you the straight up on what's going on. And because I want people to be emotional with the cattle dogs. That's one of our jobs now. Is we're all getting a little bit older. There's not a lot of cattle dog people. We want more people showing dogs. We want them more doing some stuff with the cattle dogs, and I think we're starting to achieve that.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, for being with me today. We've learned a lot about the Australian cattle dog.
Thank you.